Loop if the condition never evaluates to false. In the example, we print the numbers from 0 to 4 by initializing the counter I and incrementing it by 1 in each iteration step. We check if I is smaller than 5. If this is the case, then the program prints the updated value of I. The while loop first evaluates the condition condition and then executes the code if the condition is true. The do-while loop does it in the opposite way. It first executes the code and then evaluates the condition. Because the condition is evaluated only after the code is executed, the code is executed at least once, even if the condition is false. Welcome to our fourth lecture of the Language Basics module. Welcome to the fifth and the last lecture of the Language Basics module. In this module, we will learn about conditional statements. An example for a conditional statement could be the following. If you know JavaScript, you can implement a web app. Conditional statements are used to perform different actions based on different conditions. There are 4 ways to construct a conditional statement in JavaScript. First, if a specified condition is true, a code block following an if statement is executed. Second, if a specified condition is false, a block following an else statement is executed. Third, if a specified condition is false, a condition following the else if statement is evaluated. Finally, a switch statement compares the values of the switch expression with the values of the switch cases and executes a code block associated with the match. If statement includes a condition to be evaluated and the block of code to be executed in case the condition is true. In the example, the code block is executed in case the variable x holds a value larger than 0. If else statement includes a condition to be evaluated and the block of code to be executed in case the condition is true. It also includes a block of code to be executed in case the condition is false. In the example, the program evaluates if the variable x is larger than 0. If true, the variable text is set to x is a positive number. Otherwise, text is set to x is 0 or a negative number. An if-else-if statement shorter way is to use a for loop with a variable that changes with each iteration of the loop. There are several options of how a block of code can be repeatedly run in JavaScript. The second statement is the loop termination condition, which is I less than 5 in the example. Once this statement evaluates to false, the loop terminates. Finally, the third statement is the updater, I++ in the example. This statement is invoked after each loop iteration. Typically, it increments or decrements the counter. All three statements are usually written in one line, and each of them is optional. A for-in loop is especially useful when working with objects. It iterates over the properties of an object and returns the name of each of the properties. In the example, at each iteration of the loop, the variable I is set to the name of each property of the object king. At each iteration, the value of I is printed to the console. As a result, we have the strings first name, last name, and age printed. While the for-in loop is great for iterating over object properties, the for-off loop should be the choice when iterating over array values. As a matter of fact, using for-off for other reference types fails with a type error. If using the for-in loop for an array, then the indices instead of values are printed as shown in the second example. The for loop is repeated a specific number of times. The while loop, in contrast, is repeated an unknown number of times as long as a condition is met. A while loop works by first evaluating its condition. If it is true, the code block within the while loop is executed until the condition evaluates to false. Once the condition is false, the while loop terminates. Note, it is very easy to create an infinite loop if the condition never evaluates to false. In the example, we print the numbers from 0 to 4 by initializing the counter I and incrementing it by 1 in each iteration step. We check if I is smaller than 5. If this is the case, then the program prints the updated value of I. The while loop first evaluates the condition and then executes the code if the condition is true. The do-while loop does it in the opposite way. It first executes the code and then evaluates the condition. Because the condition is evaluated only after the code is executed, the code is executed at least once, even if the condition is false. If statement evaluates a new if condition if the first if condition is evaluated to false. If a subsequent if condition is evaluated to true, then the block of code that follows this else if statement is executed. In the example, the program evaluates if the variable x is larger than 0. If true, the variable text is set to x is a positive number. If the value of x is smaller than 0, the program sets the variable text to x is a negative number. If both if conditions are false, the program sets the variable text to x is a 0. A switch statement compares the values of the switch expression with the
What? What?
Do you want the soup, honey?
I can't come out, Mom. My body hurts. I'm cold.
Can I, if I bring it over, get it?
Sure. I just can't drive or go nowhere.
No, no, no. I'll be glad to drive it over. It's just that I just got out of treatment and we started late because of the weather and stuff. And so I can bring it over actually, as soon as I get some boots on and stuff. I'll just bring it over now because it's a big big container full.
Okay, Mom. I gotta get off the phone because my something's about to end. Hang up.
All right, bye. I'll call you when I'm out front. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
the values of the switch cases and executes a code block associated with the match. A switch expression is specified at the top of the switch statement. Switch cases are evaluated from top to bottom. Once a match is found, the block of code following the match is executed. If there is a break statement within this block code, then the whole switch statement is terminated and the program moves on. Now attention! In case there is no break statement, execution goes through all consequent code blocks until a break statement or until the very end of the switch statement. Finally, the default keyword can be used within a switch block to specify a block of code that executes if no matches are found. Welcome to the fifth and the last lecture of the Language Basics module. In this module, we will learn about conditional statements. An example of if a specified condition is true, a code block following an if statement is executed. Second, Finally, a switch statement compares the values of the switch expression. Else statement includes a condition to be evaluated and the block of code executed in case the variable x is a positive number, condition is evaluated to true, then the block of code that follows this else if statement is 0. If true, the variable text is switch cases and executes a code block associated. The whole switch statement is terminated. Consequent code blocks. Specify a block of code that
Thank you, Tatiana, for this comprehensive lecture about the language basics. As we mentioned at the introduction to this module, JavaScript may resemble general-purpose
Well, I just completed my first Node.js tutorial. Thank you very much, Jesus. I'm just wondering if we're broadcasting. OBS. Okay, so now we're going to. There we go. We're gonna go. Through a Node.js visual tutorial created by Creative Apps for you on a whiteboard, provided by, and thanks to Microsoft. So it was a process, but got through it. It's just a basic flashcard sort of assembly notes. So, I had them laid out a lot closer, and maybe they should be closer because zoomed in that far. So what is Node.js? First of all, you gotta focus, you gotta trust, and you got to believe. So, hello world. It's a console log. The character set. Case-sensitive language. Whitespace and newslines. JavaScript ignores whitespace tabs for because it is spread and understand. But it's better when they're all straight in a line comments. This is a single line comment. Say long or multi-line comment syntax. Ignored by JavaScript. Also text written between /* and //. I think I'm gonna go. I think it's better, more organized in this format. It's more concise. So white space, newslines, comments, your variables, your reserved words cannot be used as identifiers, declaring variables, constants, read only and declared with the const keyword, printing out variables to the console. Literals, fixed value that is literally provided to a variable is called a literal. I think this is right. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. We go from declaring variables to constants. List of the keywords before a variable can be used in JavaScript. It needs to be its declaration and identifier within an associated constant value. Accessing an undeclared value throws a reference error exception accessing a declared variable but not initialized with a value returns undefined. Declaration of a variable. It is sufficient to just enter its identifier. Literals. A fixed value literally provided to variable called literal. Data types. 4. String number bullet. 5, 7. String 6. 4. String number boolean undefined null objects and arrays. This is not really important. I can maybe get rid of it. Well, it does say data types. We'll just leave it in there. Data types. Data types. JavaScript is an untyped language. This means that unlike in other languages, errata corrige. As some viewers pointed out in this video, there is a mistake in one code snippet example. Okay, so in JavaScript, Node.js number type. Only one type in JavaScript is its 64-bit floating point number. That is the type, the number type in Node.js. Only one type in JavaScript. 64-bit floating point numbers. And number type 2 is standard arithmetical operations, and modules are defined for numbers through infinity and non. Outcome of a mathematical operation is undefined result or an error. Special values, infinity and non. Then we get into number type 3, floating arithmetics. Is not always accurate. Is not always accurate. More complex operations. Variable X, variable Y, variable power number, variable oh, now we see something here coming up. It's called a string type. This is where I stop counting at 16. String type. Strings can be defined with single or double quotes. Special characters can be inserted using escape character, the two scrolls, and then the backslash. Length of a string corresponds to the number of characters in it. So that's your string type. And then you have your Boolean type, which we all know what the Boolean type is. That's easy. That's like pi. It's just yay or nay, true or false. And then your undefined type, a non-initialized variable without value, has the type undefined. X, undefined. Y, undefined. X, semicolon, undefined. Undefined, but also could be assigned manually to a variable. So you can assign it to a variable. So I don't have an example of assigning it to a variable. Undefined can be assigned. I don't have the example. But moving right along, we are into the null type. So null means nothing. Is used to indicate an absence of value. It is considered good practice to use null in your code instead of undefined. This is tricky. What comes next? Last but not least, we have our object collection of named values. Objects consist of properties that describe the object. The property is the mapping between keys, strings, and values of any data type in the format key true value between keys. And then we enter into arrays, which is what you will call a indexed collection, used to store multiple values of index by number. So we'll leave that for the next stream. That's just dabbling into whiteboard with Microsoft. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching.